Okay, my peeps. So I only got to page 8 in Outsiders yesterday before my phone decided to stop recording. So, right at the bottom of page 8, I'm going to go ahead and finish us up. So, I, he didn't like me. He thought I was a tag along, a kid. Soda always took me with them when they went places if they weren't taking girls, and that bugged Steve. It wasn't my fault. Soda always asked me. I didn't ask him. Soda doesn't think I'm a kid. Two Bit Matthews was the oldest of the gang and the wisecracker of the bunch. He was 6 feet tall, stocky in build, and very proud of his long, rusty colored sideburns. He has gray eyes and a wide grin, and he couldn't stop making funny remarks to save his life. The top of 10. You couldn't shut up that guy. He always had to get his 2 bits worth in. Hence his name. Even his teachers forgot his real name was Keith, and we hardly remembered he had one. Life was one big joke to 2 Bit. He was famous for shoplifting and his black-handled switchblade, which he couldn't have acquired without his first talent, and he was always smarting off to the cops. He really couldn't help it. Everything he said was so irresistibly funny that he just had to let the police in on it to brighten up their dull lives. That's the way he explained it to me. He liked fights, blondes, and for some unfathomable reason, school. He was still a junior at 18 and a half, and he never learned anything. He just went for kicks. I liked him real well because he kept us laughing at ourselves as well as at other things. He reminded me of Will Rogers. Maybe it was the grin. If I had to pick a real character of the gang, it would have been Dallas Winston. Dally and I used to draw his picture when he was in a dangerous mood, for then I could get his personality down in a few lines. He had elfish face with high cheekbones and a pointed chin, small, sharp animal teeth, ears like a lynx. His hair was almost white, it was so blonde, and he didn't like haircuts or hair oil either. So it fell over his forehead in wisp and kicked out in the back in tufts and curled behind his ears and along the nape of his neck. His eyes were blue, blazing ice cold, and hatred of the whole world. Dally had spent 3 years on the wild side of New York and had been arrested at the age of 10. He was tougher than the rest of us, tougher, colder, meaner. The shade of difference that separates greasers from hood wasn't present in Dally. He was as wild as the boys in the downtown outfits, like Tim Shepard's gang. In New York, Dally blew off steam in gang fights, but here, organized gangs are rarities, and there are small bunches of friends who stick together. And the warfare is between the social classes. A rumble, when it's called, is usually born of a grudge fight, and the opponents just happen to bring their friends along. Oh, there are a few names, gangs around here, like the River Kings and the Timber Street Tigers, but here in the Southwest, there's no gang rivalry. So Dally, even though he could get into good fights sometimes, had no specific thing to hate. No rival gang, only socks. And you can't win against them, no matter how hard you try, because they've got all the breaks. And even whipping them, that isn't going to change the fact. Maybe that was why Dally was so bitter. He had quite a reputation. They have a file on him down at the police station. He'd been arrested, he'd got drunk, he rode in rodeos, lied, cheated, stole, rolled drunks, jumped small kids. He did everything. I didn't like him, but he was smart, and you had to respect him. Johnny Cade was last and least. If you can picture a little dark puppy that had been kicked too many times and it's lost in the crowd of strangers, you'll have Johnny. He was the youngest next to me, smaller than the rest, with a slight build. He had big black eyes, dark tan face. His hair was jet black and heavily greased and combed to the side, but it was so long that it fell in shaggy bangs across his forehead. He had nervous, suspicious look in his eyes, and that beating got from the socks didn't help matters. He was the gang's pet, everyone's kid brother. His father was always beating him up, and his mother ignored him, except for when she was hacked off at something, and then you could hear her yelling at him clear down at our house. I think he hated that worse than getting whipped. He would have to run away a million times if he hadn't been there. If that hadn't been for the gang, Johnny would have never known what love and affection are. I wiped my eyes hurriedly. Did you catch 'em? Nope, they got away this time dirty. Two-Bit went on cheerfully, calling the socks every name he could think of or make up. The kid's okay. I'm okay. I tried to think of something to say. I'm usually pretty quiet around people, even the gang. I changed the subject. I didn't know you were out of the cooler yet, Dally. Good behavior. I got off early. Dallas lit a cigarette and handed it to Johnny. Everyone sat down to have a smoke and relax. Smoke always lessens the tension. I had quit trembling and my color was back. The cigarette was calming me down. Two-Bit cocked an eyebrow. Nice looking bruise you got there, kid. I touched my cheek gingerly. Really? Two-Bit nodded sagely. Nice cut, too. Makes you look tough. Tough and tough are two different words. Tough is the same as rough. Tough means cool, sharp, like tough looking. Mustang or tough record. In the neighborhood, both are compliments. Steve flicked his ashes at me. What are you doing? Walking by your lonesome. Leave it to good old Steve to bring up something like that. I was coming home from the movies. I didn't think. You don't ever think, Derry broke in. Not at home or anywhere when it counts. You must think at school with all those good grades you bring home. You've always got your nose in the book, but do you ever use your head for common sense? No siree, bub. And if you did have to go by yourself, you should have carried a blade. I just stared at the hole on my toe and my tennis shoe. Me and Derry just didn't dig each other. I never could please him. He would have hollered at me for carrying a blade if I had carried one. If I brought home B's, he'd want A's. If I got A's, he wanted to make sure they stayed A's. If I was playing football, I should be studying. If I was reading, I should be playing football. He never hollered at Soda Pop, not even when Soda Pop dropped out of school or got tickets for speeding. He just hollered at me. Soda was glaring at him. Leave my kid brother alone. You hear? It ain't his fault. He likes to go to the movies. And if he'd been carrying a blade, it would have been a good excuse to cut him into ribbons. Soda always ticks up for me, Derry said impatiently. When I want my kid brother to tell me what to do with my other kid brother, I'll ask you. Kid brother? But he laid off me. He always does when Soda Pop tells him to, most of the time. Next time, get one of us to go with you, Pony Boy, Two-Bit said. Any of us will. Speaking of movies, Dally yawned, flipping away a cigarette butt. I'm walking over to the Nightly Double tomorrow night. Anybody want to come and hunt some action? Steve shook his head. Me and Soda are picking up Evie and Sandy from the game. He didn't need to look at me that way. He did right then. I wasn't going to ask if I could come. I never tell Soda because he really likes Steve a lot. But sometimes I can't stand Steve Randall. I mean, sometimes I hate him. Derry sighed. I knew he would. Derry never had time to do anything anymore. I'm working tomorrow night. Dally looked at the rest of us. How about y'all? Two-Bit, Johnny Cake, and Pony, you want to come? Me and Johnny'll come, I said. I knew Johnny wouldn't open his mouth unless he was forced to. Okay, Derry. You ain't got school night. Derry was real good about me letting me go places on the weekend. On school nights, I could hardly leave the house. I wasn't planning on getting boozed up tomorrow night, Two-Bit said. If I don't, I'll walk over and find y'all. Steve was looking at Dally's hand. His ring, which he had rolled a drunk senior to get, was back on his finger. You break up with Sylvia again? Yeah. And this time it's for good. That little broad was two-timing me again while I was in jail. I thought Sylvia and Evie and Sandy and Two Bits mini blondes, they were the only kind of girls that would look at us. I thought tough, loud girls who wore too much eye makeup and giggled and swore too much. I like Soda's girl, Sandy, just fine though. Her hair was natural blonde and her laugh was soft like her china blue eyes. She didn't have a real good home or anything and was our kind, a greaser, but she was real nice girl. Still lots of times I wondered what other girls were like. The girls were bright eyed and had their dresses decent length and acted as if they'd spit on us if given a chance. Some were afraid of us, and remembering Dallas Winston, I didn't blame them. But most looked at us like we were dirt, gave us the same kind of look that Sox did when they came by in their Mustangs or Corvairs and yelled, "Grease!" at us, and I wondered about them. Girls, I mean. Did they cry when their boys were arrested like Evie did when Steve got hauled in? Or did they run out on them the way Sylvia did to Dallas when maybe their boys didn't get arrested or beaten up or busted up in rodeos? I was still thinking about it while I was doing my homework that night. I had to read Great Expectations for English. That kid, Pip, he reminded me of us the way he felt marked lousy because he wasn't a gentleman or anything. The way the girl kept looking down on him. That happened to me once. One time in biology, I had to dissect a worm and the razor wouldn't cut. So I used my switchblade. The minute I flicked it out, I forgot what I was doing. I would have never done it. The girl right beside me kind of gasped and said, "They are right. You are a hood." That didn't make me feel so hot. There were a lot of socks in the class. I got put in A classes because I'm supposed to be smart, and most of them thought it was pretty funny. I didn't, though. She was a cute girl. She looked really good in yellow. We deserve we deserve a lot of trouble, I thought. Dallas deserved everything he gets and should get worse if you want the truth. And Two Bit doesn't really want or need half the things he swipes from stores. He just thinks it's fun to swipe everything that isn't nailed down. I could understand why Soda Pop and Steve got in drag races and fights so much. Both of them have too much energy, too much feeling, with no way to blow it off. "Rub harder," I heard Deary mumbling. "You're gonna put me to sleep." I looked through the door, then Soda Pop was giving Derry a back rub. Derry is always pulling muscles. He roofs houses, and he's always trying to carry two bundles of roofing up the ladder. I knew Soda would put him to sleep because Soda can put about anyone out when he sets his head to it. He thought Derry worked too hard anyway. I did too. Derry didn't deserve to work like an old man when he was only 20. He'd been a real popular guy in school. He was a captain of the football team and he had been voted Boy of the Year. But we just didn't have the money for him to go to college, even with the athletic scholarship he won. Uh, and now he didn't have time between jobs to even think about college. So he never went anywhere and never did anything anymore, except for work out at gyms and go skiing with some old friends of his sometimes. I rubbed my cheek where it had turned purple. I had looked in the mirror, and it did make me look tough, but Derry had made me put a band-aid on the cut. I remembered how awful Johnny had looked when he had got beaten up. I had just as much right to use the streets as the Sox did, and Johnny never heard them. Why did the Sox hate us so much? We left them alone. I nearly went to sleep over my homework trying to figure it out. Soda Pop, who had jumped into bed by this time, yelled sleepily for me to turn off the light and get to bed. When I finished the chapter I was on, I did. Lying beside Soda, staring at the wall, I kept remembering the faces, the socks surround me, the blue Madras shirt the blonde was wearing. I could still hear the thick voice. "Need a haircut, greaser?" I shivered. "You cold, pony boy?" "A little," I lied. Soda threw one of his arms across my neck. He mumbled something drowsily. "Listen, kiddo, when Derry hollers at you, he doesn't mean nothing. He just got more worries than somebody his age ought to. Don't take him serious. You dig, pony?" Don't let him bug you. He's really proud of you because you're so brainy, and it's just because you're the baby. I mean, he loves you a lot. Savvy? Sure, I said, trying for sake to keep the sarcasm out of my voice. Soda, yeah? How come you dropped out? I'd never gotten over that. I could hardly stand it when he left school, 'cause I'm dumb. The only thing I was passing anyway was automatic mechanics and gym. You're not dumb. Yeah, I am. Shut up, and I tell you something. Don't tell Derry, okay? I think I'm gonna marry Sandy after she gets out of school and get a better job and everything. I might wait till you get out of school, though, so I can still help Derry with the bills and stuff. Tough enough. Wait till I get out, though, so you can keep Gary off my back? Don't be like that, kid. I told you he don't mean half of what he says. You're in love with Sandy? What's that like? He sighed happily. It's real nice. In a moment, his breathing was light and regular, and I turned my head to look at him. In the moonlight, he looked like some Greek god come to earth. I wondered how he could be stand being so handsome. I sighed. I didn't quite get what he meant about Derry. Derry thought I was just another mouth to feed and someone to holler at. Derry loved me. I thought about those hard, pale eyes. Soda was wrong for once. I thought Derry doesn't love anyone or anything except maybe Soda. I didn't hardly think of him as being a human. I don't care. I lied to myself. I don't care about him. Soda's enough. And I have him until I get out of school. I don't care about Derry. But I was still lying, and I knew it. I lie to myself all the time. But I never believed me. So, here's a few questions I would like you to think about, maybe write down. If you relate to any of the characters, who could you relate most to? Could you relate most to one of the Socks? Could you relate most to one of the guys in Ponyboy's gang? Johnny, Derry, Dally, Two-Bit, Soda Pop, Derry? If you feel like you relate to one of those characters, why do you relate to one of those characters? Do you feel like you would be a Sock? Do you feel like you'd be a Greaser? Do you feel like you'd be a Hood? Do you feel like you wouldn't be any of those? Um, were there any slang terms in the book so far that you heard? Like tough, or you get sock, greaser. There were a bunch of other ones. So keep your eyes out. It's obviously from a different time. If you were Pony, how would you have felt if you got jumped like that? Have you ever got jumped? Have you ever been beat up? How does that feel? How do you think Derry feels having to raise his two kid brothers? Do you think he loves Ponyboy, or do you think he's just hard on him? What do you think? These are things to ponder for chapter 1 of The Outsiders. Alrighty. See you later.